The night was quiet, but the forest beside the road was never truly silent. John walked home slowly, his old boots pressing against the wet ground. The moonlight was weak, covered by dark clouds, and the street lamps on this side of the town were broken. Only the sound of crickets and the soft wind kept him company. He was used to this walk, but tonight felt different. Something in the air felt heavy. As if someone was watching him, John tried to ignore it, pulling his jacket tighter around his chest. But then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a faint glow between the trees. At first, he thought it was a broken lamp, or maybe a firefly. But the glow did not flicker. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. John stopped walking, frozen in place. The sound of the wind seemed to vanish, and all he could hear was his own breathing. Curiosity pushed him forward. He stepped off the road and entered the dark forest, branches cracking under his boots. The glow grew brighter, and now he could see a small figure crouching behind a fallen tree. John's heart pounded harder with every step he took. When he got closer, he gasped. It was not a child from the town, not a lost human at all. It was a little girl, but her skin shimmered faint blue and her hair glowed softly in the dark. Her eyes, wide and silver, reflected the moon like liquid metal. John froze, not believing what he was seeing. The girl looked, scared, hugging her knees tightly. Her clothes were strange, like torn silver fabric, burned and damaged as if from an explosion. She stared at him without blinking, her eyes shining with both fear and hope. For a moment, John wanted to run. Every story he ever heard about aliens and monsters filled his head, but something inside him whispered that this girl was not here to hurt him. She looked weak, fragile, like she needed help. "Are you lost?" John asked, his voice shaking. The girl tilted her head, but no words came from her mouth. Instead, she made soft sounds, musical but strange. John felt chills run down his spine, but he also felt pity. He took a small step closer, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. The girl flinched, pressing herself against the tree. But then her tiny hand lifted slowly, glowing faintly. John watched in shock as a small rock near her floated into the air and dropped again. She had powers no human child could have. John's fear grew, but so did his sense of responsibility. Whatever she was alone, hurt, and scared. If he left her here, something terrible could happen to her. Then in the distance, John heard a sharp sound. A strange echo, metallic like footsteps on steel even though the ground was soil. He quickly looked around, but saw nothing, only the shadows of trees moving in the wind. The girl looked at him, again her silver eyes full of fear, and she pointed to the sky. John followed her finger but saw only clouds. Still, his instincts screamed that someone, or something, was searching for her. He bit his lip, unsure what to do. But when the girl reached out her small, glowing hand toward him, his heart softened. "All right," he whispered. "I'll help you." He carefully wrapped his jacket around her tiny body. The girl shivered, but allowed him to pick her up. Her body was light, almost too light, like she was made of air and light together. Carrying her back to the road, John felt uneasy. The forest seemed alive, watching him, whispering to him through the trees. Every shadow looked like a shape, every sound like a warning. But he kept walking, holding the little alien girl close. When he reached his house at the edge of town, he rushed inside, locking the door behind him. The girl sat on his couch, staring around with wide, glowing eyes. John could not believe what he had just done. He had brought something not of this world into his home. As he poured her a glass of water, his hands trembled. He did not know if this was a mistake. He did not know if she was dangerous or if danger was already coming. But deep inside, he felt this was only the beginning. Outside his window, the night grew darker. Somewhere in the distance, a low hum filled the air, deep and unnatural. John froze at the sound, realizing it was not thunder. It was something else, something searching, something drawing closer. The little alien girl looked at him again. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but instead of words, she whispered a soft sound that made his skin crawl. It was not English, but John understood. Its meaning clearly: "They are coming." John could not sleep that night. The little alien girl was sitting quietly in the corner of his living room, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dark. She looked small and fragile, almost like a lost bird, yet there was something powerful hidden inside her. John kept pacing around the room, asking himself the same question over and over. What had he done? He wanted to believe he had saved a child, but this was no ordinary child. The girl had strange energy around her, like invisible waves moving through the air. The glass of water he gave her earlier still sat untouched on the table, yet the water rippled every time she blinked. It was as if her very presence disturbed the world around her. Finally, John sat across from her, trying to calm his racing mind. "You must be hungry," he said softly, his voice unsure. The girl tilted her head like she was trying to understand. John went to the kitchen, grabbed a piece of bread and placed it in front of her. At first, she only stared at it, her glowing fingers brushing the surface of the bread. Then, in an instant, the bread floated a few inches off the plate, spinning. Slowly, John's eyes widened, both amazed and afraid. The girl then pushed the bread back down gently, as if showing him what she could do. "You can move things," John whispered under his breath. The girl did not reply, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. For the first time, John felt she trusted him, even if just a little. The night stretched on, and John tried to learn more. He pointed at himself. "John," then tapped his chest. The girl watched carefully, then she touched her own chest and made a soft sound. It wasn't a word John knew, but it was a name. Her name. It sounded like Lyra. "Lyra," John repeated slowly. The girl nodded, her silver eyes shining with a strange warmth. In that small moment, John no longer saw her as an alien, but as a child who needed help. But things around the house began to change. The lights flickered randomly, sometimes glowing too bright, sometimes shutting off completely. John's phone stopped working, showing only static and broken signals. His old radio turned on by itself, filling the room with strange whispers, in a language he could not understand. Every time this happened, Lyra's glow grew stronger. It was as if she was a magnet pulling energy into herself. John realized her powers were connected to electricity, maybe even to the very air around them, and the more time passed, the more unstable it became. On the second night, John woke up to find Lyra standing at the window. She pressed her glowing hands against the glass, staring at the cloudy sky. Her lips moved, whispering sounds John could not understand. Then suddenly, her whole body glowed brighter than ever before, lighting up the room like a lamp. John rushed over, grabbing her shoulders. "Lyra, stop. Someone will see." But she turned her head slowly, her silver eyes filled with tears. She made a sound, one that John could almost understand this time. It was not clear, but it felt like one word. "Home." John's chest tightened. She wasn't just lost, she was calling for her people. But if she was calling, then others might already know where she was, and not all of them would be friendly that night. Strange things began happening outside. Dogs barked endlessly across the neighborhood, their howls echoing like alarms. John saw shadows moving near the tree line, but when he grabbed a flashlight and looked, nothing was there. Still, he felt the same heavy pressure in the air as the night he first found her. Lyra grew restless, pacing back and forth, her glowing hair floating slightly as if moved by invisible wind. She kept pointing at the sky, her eyes filled with fear and urgency. John understood enough to know that something was coming, but he had no idea whether it was rescue or danger. On the third day, John noticed something even stranger. Lyra began to mimic his words, slowly, brokenly. She pointed at objects around the house, repeating what John called them. "Chair," she whispered softly, her accent strange. "Window," she said, her voice trembling. When she finally said his name, John, it sent chills down his spine. She was learning, fast, and every time she spoke, her voice carried a strange echo, like two voices layered together, one human and one otherworldly. It was beautiful, but also haunting. That evening, John sat across from her again, feeling torn. He wanted to protect her, but deep down he knew he couldn't keep her hidden forever. If someone was searching for They would come sooner or later, and when they did, he had no idea what they would do to him, or to her. Suddenly, a loud thud shook the side of his house. John jumped to his feet, his heart racing. He grabbed a kitchen knife. Though he knew it would be useless against whatever was outside, Lyra's glow dimmed instantly, as if she was trying to hide herself. The sound came again, this time at the front door. A heavy, deliberate knock that made the walls tremble. John's hands shook as he held the knife, staring at the door. Then, through the silence, a voice spoke from outside, calm but deep. "Open," it said, the word broken but clear. John froze, his mind spinning. Whoever was at his door, they were not human, and they knew the girl was inside. Lyra grabbed John's arm, her silver eyes, wide with fear. Her lips formed a single word, almost perfect in English this time. "No." The knock at the door faded, but the silence that followed was even worse. John stood frozen in the middle of the room, gripping the kitchen knife so tight that his hand ached. His heart pounded against his ribs, and every second felt like an hour. Lyra hid behind the couch, her glowing eyes peeking out in fear. The knock did not return, yet the air felt heavier. John could almost hear a hum, low and deep, vibrating through the walls. He knew something was out there, watching, waiting. He dared not move, afraid even his breath would give them away. Minutes passed, maybe more, but it felt endless. Finally, John forced himself to peek through the small window near the door. The street was empty, no sign of anyone, but the shadows near the trees seemed thicker, darker, almost alive. "Nothing," he whispered to himself, trying to believe it. But his gut told him the truth. Whatever knocked was still out there, and it was not human. He returned to the living room, finding Lyra crouched low, her small hands glowing faintly. She looked at him, her lips moving slowly, forming words with difficulty. "Danger," she whispered, the sound broken but clear. John felt cold shivers run down his spine. That night, he did not sleep. He sat in his chair with the knife resting, on his knee, listening to every sound outside. The wind scratched against the windows, branches tapped on the walls, and every now and then, he swore he heard footsteps circling the house. Lyra did not rest either. She sat curled up on the couch, her silver eyes open wide, glowing faintly in the dark. Sometimes she made soft sounds like humming, and every time she did, the lights flickered. It felt like she was trying to shield the house with her strange power. Hours dragged on until morning came, but the fear did not fade. John stepped outside cautiously, gripping the knife still. The ground was wet with dew, the air heavy with mist, and in the dirt near the trees, he saw footprints, but they were not normal footprints. They were long, narrow, with too many toes pressed deep into the ground. Something large had walked around his home during the night. John's stomach turned as he followed the tracks a few steps, then stopped, afraid of what he might find. He went back inside quickly, locking every door and window. "Not safe," he muttered under his breath. Lyra looked at him as if she understood, nodding slowly. The girl was more aware than he first thought, maybe even more than she let him see. The second night was worse. The strange noises outside returned, low growls, clicking sounds, whispers, that didn't belong to any language John knew. His TV turned on by itself, showing only static, but in the static, he thought he saw shapes moving. Twisted figures with glowing eyes staring straight at him. The shadows outside the window stretched unnaturally long. Even when no one was near, he swore he saw faces forming in the darkness, and every time he tried to step closer, they vanished, leaving only silence. Lyra grew restless, pacing the living room with her hands glowing brighter than before. She pressed her palms against the walls as if she could feel something moving outside. Her eyes filled with fear, and she repeated one word again and again. "Hunters," she whispered, her voice shaking. John's chest tightened. He wanted to ask her what that meant, but deep down he already knew. If she was here, then others must be searching for her, and not all of them wanted to save her. By the third night, John was breaking. He hadn't slept properly in days, his nerves on fire, his eyes heavy but unable to close. Every shadow looked like it was alive. Every noise sounded like footsteps creeping closer, His own house felt like a cage, trapping him with fear. Then came the sound, louder than before, a heavy metallic screech outside, like steel dragging across stone. John grabbed Lyra and pulled her close, his heart racing out of control. The hum returned, shaking the very walls of the house. Suddenly, all the lights exploded with sparks, plunging them into total darkness. Lyra cried out, her body glowing bright blue, filling the room with strange light. John looked at her in shock. She was glowing brighter than ever, almost like a beacon. And then, through the window, he saw them. Two shapes stood at the edge of the trees, tall, unmoving, their eyes glowing faintly in the mist. John couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The figures did not step forward, but he knew they had seen her. He knew they had seen everything. The silence broke with another knock at the door. Slow, heavy, deliberate. John froze, clutching Lyra tightly. The knock came again, louder this time, shaking the wood. And then, a voice spoke through the door. Deep and commanding, child, it said, the word broken but powerful. John felt every hair on his neck rise. Lyra trembled, hiding her face against his chest, whispering one last word. Run. The knocking at the door grew louder, steady, like a drumbeat in the night. John held Lyra close, his chest tight with fear. The glow of her body lit the room faintly, casting strange shadows on the walls. Every knock echoed like thunder, shaking his small house. Finally, the knocking stopped. Silence filled the air again, heavy and sharp. John dared to step toward the door, his hand trembling as it touched the lock. He leaned close, listening, praying it was only his imagination. Then a voice came. Soft, but commanding. Open, human, it said. The words broken but clear. John's blood turned cold, his grip on the handle frozen. The voice carried power. Not human, not natural. Behind him, Lyra shook her head violently, her silver eyes wide. No, she whispered, her voice stronger than before. Her tiny hands glowed brighter, clutching John's sleeve as if begging him not to move. But John could not just stand there. He needed to know what waited outside. He slowly unlocked the door, the sound of the click echoing through the silence. The door creaked open and John froze. Standing on his porch were two tall figures, not shadows anymore, but real, solid, terrifying. They were women, or at least they looked like women, but not of this earth. Their skin shimmered faintly under the moonlight, pale and smooth with a faint silver glow. Their eyes glowed like polished steel, sharp and unblinking. One was taller, her long hair flowing down like black liquid. The other shorter but with armor-like skin covering her arms. Both radiated an energy that made John's chest tighten with fear. They stepped forward slowly, their movements graceful but heavy. The taller one spoke first, her voice smooth but broken in English. Human, she said, pointing toward the inside of the house. The child, she is ours. John's stomach dropped, every muscle in his body tense. He looked back at Lyra, who stood behind him, glowing faintly, shaking her head again and again. Her eyes were filled with fear but also anger. No, she whispered, the word almost perfect. John's heart twisted, torn between the strangers at his door and the small alien girl clinging to him. The shorter woman stepped forward, her voice sharper. You keep her, you die, she said coldly. Her glowing eyes burned into John's, making his legs weak. But something inside him fought back. Anger, not just fear. She's just a child, John said, his voice shaking but steady enough. She's not safe with you. The taller woman's expression softened slightly, her glowing eyes flickering. She is not safe with you either, human, she said quietly. Danger comes. Those words froze John. What did she mean, danger? Were they the danger, or was something else coming? He had no answers, only more fear. Behind him, Lyra suddenly let out a sharp cry. The air around her shimmered, and the lights in the house flickered violently. The two alien women stepped back slightly, their faces tense. She calls, the taller one whispered, her tone urgent. Others here, they come. John's chest tightened. Others, more of them, maybe worse than these two. The taller woman looked at him again, her eyes burning with strange emotion. Human, she said firmly. We protect her. But you must give her, Lyra screamed, her voice sharp and filled with fear. She ran to John, clutching his arm, her glowing fingers digging into his skin. Her silver eyes stared at him, begging him. No, she said again, stronger, louder. No go. John looked at her, then back at the women, his mind spinning. If he gave her to them, maybe she would be safe, or maybe she would vanish forever. If he kept her, he risked both their lives. But deep inside, something told him he could not just hand her over. Why should I trust you? John demanded, his voice breaking. The shorter woman hissed, her glowing eyes narrowing. Trust not needed, human, she said coldly. It is command. But the taller one raised a hand, silencing her. The taller woman looked straight into John's eyes. Her silver gaze burned deep, almost like she was searching his mind. Finally, she spoke softly. She is royal child, lost in war, enemies hunt. Her earth not safe, your house not safe, we take her or she dies. John's breath caught. A royal child, hunted by enemies. It sounded impossible, like a story from a book, but the fear in their voices was real. The ground beneath them trembled suddenly, a faint vibration rising through the floor. The shorter woman's eyes widened, looking toward the sky. They come, she whispered, her voice sharp with urgency. John followed her gaze, and his blood ran cold. In the distance, strange lights flickered in the clouds. Red and unnatural, moving closer. Lyra cried out, glowing brighter than ever, her small hands clutching John's arm tightly. The taller woman stepped closer, her voice almost desperate now. Choose, human, she said, her silver eyes burning. Give her, or lose all. The hum in the sky grew louder, filling the night with a terrible vibration. John stood frozen at his doorway. Torn between fear and instinct, Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with trust. The alien women looked at him, their faces hard and urgent, and above them, the sky began to open with red light. The sky rumbled with red light, glowing through, the clouds like fire. John's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break his ribs. The two alien women stood tall at his door, their glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. Lyra clung to John's arm, her small body trembling, but her glow brighter than ever. The taller woman turned back to him, her face stern but calm. You do not understand, human, she said slowly. This child, not only child, she is heir. John's brow furrowed, confusion written across his face. Heir to what? He demanded, his voice shaking. What are you talking about? The shorter woman stepped forward, her silver armor glinting faintly. In Lyra's glow, she is royal, she said sharply. Her blood carries power, old power. The kind that enemies want, the kind that can destroy worlds. John's stomach dropped, his mind spinning. He looked down at the small, glowing girl clinging to him. She didn't look like royalty. She looked like a frightened child. The taller woman spoke again, her voice heavy with sorrow. Our people fight war, endless war. Many die, kingdoms fall, but she lives. She is last hope. John shook his head, unable to believe. You expect me to believe that this little girl is some kind of princess, that she's being hunted like prey? The taller woman's silver eyes softened, almost pleading. Yes, human, believe for your own life too, she whispered. Because the hunters come for her, and they will burn this world to find her. The sound of the sky above grew louder, a low hum mixed with strange metallic clicks. John swallowed hard, fear settling deep into his chest. Lyra pressed closer to him, shaking her head. No, she whispered, her voice broken but strong. Not safe, not go. Her silver eyes stared at the women with both fear and defiance. John realized then. She didn't trust them. The shorter woman growled, her patience thin. You human fool, she snapped. You protect her, you kill yourself, you kill her. John's grip on the knife in his hand tightened. His voice rose with anger, louder than he expected. Then explain why she is so afraid of you. The taller woman lowered her gaze for a moment, silence stretching heavy between them. Finally, she said, "She does not know us, but we know her. She was taken as war began, lost to us, raised in shadows. She fears all, even those who guard her." Her voice trembled at the edges, the first crack of emotion John had heard. "She is child, yes, but she carries burden too heavy." John looked down at Lyra, who stared at him with wide silver eyes. She was small, fragile, glowing faintly, yet he could feel the weight of her presence. Could she really be what they claimed? Could she really be the reason the sky itself trembled with light? The ground shook suddenly, and a loud screech filled the air. John flinched, turning toward the window. Above the trees, strange shapes moved in the sky, dark silhouettes with glowing red eyes. The hunters, whatever they were, had arrived. The shorter woman stepped closer, urgency burning in her voice. "No more time, human. Give her, or they take. Her and all of you die," Lyra cried out, clutching John's arm even tighter. Her glow surged, bright enough to light the whole room, her voice ringing with fear. "No, no, no," she repeated, shaking her head furiously. John's mind raced. If these women spoke the truth, then Lyra was no ordinary child. But if she didn't trust them, how could he? He looked at their glowing eyes, their strange calm, and something deep inside told him there was more they weren't saying. "What will you do with her?" John demanded, his voice breaking. The taller woman answered softly, almost like a promise. "Protect, raise, keep her hidden until war ends. She is key. She is last hope. Without her, we all fall." But John noticed the way the shorter woman's jaw clenched, her silver eyes hard and sharp. Her words did not match her expression. The hum outside grew louder, shaking the walls, the windows rattled, and Lyra's glow flickered wildly. John knew the house would not hold much longer. He had no time. But the choice still crushed him. He crouched low, looking into Lyra's silver eyes. She looked back at him, tears forming, her small voice trembling. "Stay," she whispered, the word almost clear. "Stay. With you." His heart broke at those words. The taller woman's voice cut through the chaos, strong and demanding. "Choose now, human," she cried. "With us she may live, with you she dies." John clenched his fists, his mind torn in two. Every instinct screamed at him to hand her over, to trust them, to survive. But when he looked at Lyra, he didn't see a royal heir, or a weapon, or a burden. He saw a scared child who trusted him more than anyone else. And in that moment, he knew his choice. Even if it killed him, he would not betray that trust. "No," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the fear. The shorter woman snarled, her eyes glowing brighter. "You fool, you doom her," she hissed, stepping forward with rage. But the taller woman raised a hand, stopping her. Her eyes locked on John. "You are brave, human," she whispered, almost with respect. "But bravery is not enough." The roof shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling. Outside, the sky split open with red fire, strange ships descending through the clouds. The hunters had arrived. Lyra clutched John's hand, her glow reaching its brightest yet. The taller woman's silver eyes widened, realization flashing across her face. "She awakens," she whispered, almost in awe. The shorter woman's expression turned from anger to shock. "No, too soon," she hissed. John didn't understand, but he felt the energy in the air shift. Lyra's glow pulsed like a heartbeat, shaking the room, making the floor vibrate. She wasn't just afraid anymore. She was changing. And the truth about who she really was had only begun to reveal itself. The sky burned red as the hunters descended. Their ships tore through the clouds like blades of fire, glowing with strange symbols. The air vibrated with a deep hum that rattled the windows and shook the ground. John's small house groaned as if it would collapse under the pressure. Inside, Lyra clung to his hand, her silver eyes wide, glowing brighter with every second. The taller alien woman looked at her with awe, while the shorter one's face twisted in rage. "She calls them." The shorter one growled, "Her power wakes." "Too early." The taller woman shook her head. Not her fault, the hunter's already near. John felt his stomach twist as the roof cracked and dust rained down. "We have to move," he shouted, his voice breaking. The taller woman nodded sharply, her glowing eyes fierce. Yes, human, we run or all die. The shorter woman didn't. Wait. She raised her arm and a beam of silver light burst from her hand. It sliced through the back wall of the house, opening a wide hole. Wind roared inside, carrying the smell of burning metal from the sky. Move, she barked, her voice sharp as thunder. John grabbed Lyra and followed, stumbling through the broken wall into the cold night. The ground trembled under his boots, the hum from above, so loud it shook his chest. When he looked up, he froze. Dark figures dropped from the ships, landing with heavy thuds in the forest. They were tall, armored, with glowing red eyes, their bodies covered in black metal plates that shifted like living skin. Lyra screamed, her glow flaring like a beacon. The hunters turned instantly, their red eyes locking onto her. The taller woman raised her hand, summoning a shield of silver light that shimmered like glass. Energy bolts from the hunters struck it, exploding in sparks, shaking the ground. Run! She shouted, her voice echoing through the night. John clutched Lyra tighter and ran into the forest, branches snapping against his arms. The two alien women followed close, their glowing forms lighting the trees around them. Behind, the hunters gave chase, their heavy footsteps pounding the earth. The forest came alive with chaos. Explosions lit up the night as beams of red energy struck trees, splitting them in half. Smoke filled the air, choking John as he pushed forward. Every step felt slower, heavier, but he forced himself to keep going. Lyra pressed her face against his chest, glowing so bright it almost blinded him. Her tiny body trembled, but John felt strange warmth flowing from her. It was as if her energy was wrapping around him, giving him the strength to keep running. Even as fear clawed at his mind, he refused to stop. The shorter woman suddenly leaped forward, her body glowing with raw power. She spun her arm and released a blade of silver energy, slicing down two hunters that blocked their path. Their armored bodies crashed into the dirt, twitching before fading into smoke. Her voice was a snarl. Go, human, faster. The taller woman stayed behind them, her shield glowing as she blocked the constant barrage of red beams. Each strike shook the ground, but she stood tall, protecting them with every ounce of her strength. Left, she shouted. There is clearing ahead. John stumbled in that direction, his lungs burning, his arms aching, but he didn't let go of Lyra. When they burst into the clearing, John gasped. One of the hunters' ships had landed, its black metal frame glowing with strange red veins. The air around it shimmered like heat, twisting and bending light. John's heart sank, realizing they were running straight into the enemy's nest. The shorter woman cursed, her silver eyes sharp. We cannot stay, we must break through. She raised both arms, and silver fire erupted from her hands, striking the ship. The ground shook violently, sparks raining down as the hull cracked open. Hunters poured out of the wreck, their red eyes glowing like burning coals. John froze, fear crushing him. There were too many, too fast, too strong. For a moment he thought it was the end, but then Lyra lifted her head from his chest, her silver eyes glowed brighter than ever before, her whole body shining like a star. She stretched her small hands outward, her voice breaking the night. No, she cried, the word ringing clear and strong. A shockwave of light burst from her body, throwing the hunters backward. The ground split, trees shattered, and the enemy ship groaned under the force. John fell to his knees, holding her as the power surged through the forest. The alien women stared in awe, their glowing eyes wide. She awakens, the taller one whispered, her voice trembling with reverence. The shorter one gritted her teeth, but even she looked shaken. This power, too much, she muttered. She cannot control it. John held Lyra tightly, his body trembling as the shockwaves rippled around them. The hunters staggered back to their feet, their red eyes burning with fury. They moved slower now, but more of them were coming, dropping from the sky like falling stars. The taller woman stepped forward, raising her shield again. We must leave, before they call more, she cried. John's chest heaved, his arms heavy from carrying Lyra. But when he looked at her glowing and exhausted in his arms, something inside him hardened. He would not give her up. Not to these monsters. Not to anyone. Even if it killed him. He would protect her. The shorter woman carved open another path with her silver blade. "Run, human!" she shouted again, her voice fierce. "This is not the end. It is only beginning." John stumbled forward, clutching Lyra tight. Behind them, the forest burned with fire and light, and the hunter's red eyes glowed brighter. In the dark, the chase had only just begun. The forest burned behind them. Red light from the hunter's ships lit the sky like fire. The ground shook with every explosion. Branches cracked, trees fell, and the night screamed with chaos. John ran until his lungs burned, clutching Lyra in his arms, his body near collapse. The two alien women flanked him, their glowing forms cutting through the smoke like silver blades. The taller one shielded them from blasts, her body trembling with each impact. The shorter one carved open the path with her sharp beams of light, her face twisted with fury. But even their power was not enough to stop the endless wave of hunters. At last, they stumbled into a clearing. The ground was torn apart. The earth, blackened as if struck by fire. In the center, an ancient stone structure stood half-buried, glowing faintly with strange symbols. The taller woman stopped, her silver eyes wide. "This place. This is sanctuary," she whispered. John collapsed to his knees, holding Lyra close. Her glow flickered weakly now, her small body trembling with exhaustion. She had unleashed power that shook the forest, and now it was draining her. Her silver eyes looked up at him, soft and full of trust. "Stay," she whispered faintly. "Stay with you." John's chest tightened, tears burning in his eyes. He wanted to promise her safety, to promise her peace. But the hunters were closing in, their red eyes glowing in the smoke, their footsteps growing louder. There was no safety, not here, not anywhere. The shorter woman stepped forward, her voice sharp and urgent. "Human, now you must decide," she growled. "Give her, or all is lost." John looked up at her, his jaw clenched. "You said that before," he snapped. "And still she clings to me. She doesn't want you." The taller woman knelt beside him, her expression softer, her voice low. "She is royal child. She carries weight greater than you understand," she whispered. "Her power can end war, or destroy worlds, but she cannot stay hidden forever. She cannot stay with you." John shook his head, anger rising in his chest. "She's just a little girl," he shouted. "She needs care, not chains, not soldiers, not war." The taller woman's silver eyes flickered, almost sad. "You think like a father," she said quietly, "but fathers cannot protect against what hunts her." Her words cut into him, sharp and painful, because deep down he knew she was right. The hunters emerged at the edge of the clearing, dozens of them, their red eyes glowing like fire. They moved slowly now, cautious, their weapons raised. John tightened his grip on Lyra, his heart racing. If he fought, he would die. If he surrendered her, she might live, but without him, the taller woman rose to her feet, raising her glowing shield. The shorter one summoned her blade of silver energy, her voice a roar of fury. The hunters fired, beams of red light crashing against the shield, shaking the ground. The women held firm, but their bodies trembled under the force. John's mind raced, torn between instinct and reason. Every fiber of his being screamed to protect Lyra, to fight until the end, but the voice of doubt whispered. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was meant for something greater. Maybe holding on to her would only bring her death. Lyra stirred weakly in his arms. Her silver eyes half closed, her small glowing hand reached up to touch his face. "Warm and gentle, John," she whispered softly, almost perfectly. "Trust." His heart broke at the sound of his name on her lips. The hunters pressed closer, the women straining under the endless attacks. The taller one shouted over the chaos, her voice fierce. "Choose, human, choose now, or all is lost." The shorter one snarled, "Hand her to us, or they tear you both apart." John's breath shook, his whole body trembling. He looked down at Lyra, then up at the sky, where fire and smoke swallowed the stars. He thought of the quiet nights before this, the lonely walks, the empty house. And then he thought of the night he found her, small and scared, reaching for him with glowing hands. She had chosen him, not them, not anyone else, and he realized now. It was not about kings, wars, or bloodlines. It was about trust, about the bond she had given him freely, and that bond was worth more than any throne. John rose to his feet, his body weak but his voice strong. "No," he shouted, his words cutting through the chaos. "She stays with me." The shorter woman screamed in rage, her silver blade slashing through the air. "Fool!" she cried. "You doom us all!" But the taller woman stopped her, her silver eyes fixed on John. For a moment there was silence even as the battle raged around them. She looked at him with something new. Respect, maybe even sorrow. "Then you have chosen," she said quietly. "May your strength be enough." Lyra's glow suddenly flared, brighter than ever before. The hunters staggered back, shielding their red eyes from the blinding light. John held her close, the heat of her energy burning against his chest. She was no longer weak, no longer afraid. Her voice rang out clear, strong, echoing through the clearing like a song. "Go," she commanded, her small arms outstretched. A wave of silver light exploded outward, throwing the hunters into the trees, shattering weapons, tearing the ground apart. The night itself seemed to bend under her power. John fell to his knees, shielding his eyes from the glow. The taller woman whispered in awe, "She awakens fully." The shorter one hissed in frustration, but even she stepped back. No one could deny it now. The child was more powerful than all of them. When the light faded, silence filled the clearing. The hunters were gone, their ships retreating into the burning sky. The women stood breathless, their glowing eyes wide. John held Lyra close, his body trembling, his choice sealed. He had chosen her, and she had chosen him. The war was far from over, the danger only beginning. But in that moment, under the burning sky, John knew one truth. Whatever came, whatever hunted them, he would face it with her, because sometimes family is not found by blood. Sometimes family is chosen in the darkest of nights, and John had chosen